So I was sitting down to film today and I thought I could do a recent reads video because I've read enough books to do that, but then I thought I don't really feel like it. So instead, we're going to do something else. Hey everybody, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel. If you have ever been here before, literally any time between my first video and now, you will know that one of my favorite things to do on this channel is simply talk about the same books over and over again. One of my other favorite things to do is judge things completely subjectively with absolutely no regard for objective fact. So I thought today I could maybe combine those two interests. So what I've decided to do is choose one of my favorite authors and then simply rank all of their books purely subjectively based on only my own personal preference. The first author that I've decided to do this with, because if I have a good time, then perhaps I will do this with other authors as well, but the first author I've decided to do this with is none other than Becky Chambers. And again, if you've been here for any length of time, you know that I talk about these books in almost every video, but I've never actually taken the time to just sit down and only talk about Becky Chambers books. So what I have here is a list that I have compiled of all 7 of her currently published novels or novellas, and I have ranked them in order of my least favorite to my most favorite. That said, this list is literally me choosing a favorite among favorites, so even the lowest ranked book on this list is still one of my favorite books. I have never rated a Becky Chambers book lower than 4.5 stars. You could choose any one of these books as your first Becky Chambers experience and still have a fantastic time, I guarantee it. Also, on this list, I am only counting her full-length novels and novellas that are published. I'm not counting any short stories or the serial novel that she is a contributing author for, because I just frankly am not trying to do all of that. If you're not familiar with Becky Chambers, she does have 1 standalone novella and then 2 series, one of which is a duology and then one of which is a 4-book series. And the series as a whole is probably technically the better way to rank these, but I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be ranking each book on its own individual merit. So with all of that said, let's just get it rolling, I guess. Hopefully this video isn't just the absolute dumbest thing I've ever done, which it might be, I don't know. So first on this list, my least favorite Becky Chambers book coming in at number 7 is To Be Taught If Fortunate, which is a standalone novella. It's not part of either of her series. It is a story about some human astronauts in the, I want to say 23rd century, who are on a mission to explore some previously uncharted planets, and they're going to be coming back to Earth at a time that's well in the future from when they left, and so they don't know if anybody will remember them or what society will be like. And I kind of wish I had had more time with the characters, I think, because Becky Chambers, some of her strongest work is in developing characters, and I just kind of wish I'd had more time to get to know all of them. But it's still fantastic, and if you want to kind of dip your toes in the Becky Chambers pool and not feel like you're committing to a whole series, you should absolutely give it a read. Coming in at number 6 is Record of a Spaceborne Few, which is the 3rd book in the Wayfarers series. This book takes place on a human ship inside of the Exodus fleet, which is a fleet of ships that were originally used when humans had to leave the no longer inhabitable Earth. And then they some kind of put them around a star, put them in orbit, and they just redeveloped society on these ships. Later on, some humans decided to leave those ships and are living on Mars now, as well as other planets, but some decided to stay. And it's really interesting because you kind of get to learn about what it's like to grow up in a very insular society and not be very familiar with the customs of anyone else. Sort of a more closed culture. And you explore what that means to different people. For me, I just didn't specifically connect with this as much as some of the other books in the series. And that's an interesting thing with the Wayfarers books in particular, is the ones that you prefer are almost always going to be the ones that are dealing with some sort of very human issue that you personally connect with the most. And that's definitely been the case for me. The ones that are my favorites are the ones that there was like at least one character or one storyline that I was just like, oh, that hits me right in my like internal struggles. Coming in at number 5, we have the first book in the Monk and Robot series, which is A Psalm for the Wild Built. I read both of the books in this series over the course of one weekend. I've vlogged about it. I can link that if you want to watch it. This is a story about a human society many, many hundreds of years in the future. Humans are now living on a distant moon, and they've sort of redeveloped society after sort of having a lot of technological advancements. They developed robots, then those robots gained sentience, decided they didn't want to serve humans anymore, and went off to live on their own, and then humans had to kind of re-figure out how to become like one with nature and sort of fuse that with their technology. And the story follows a tea monk named Sibling Dex who goes around and helps people to find small comforts, specifically by performing tea service in these towns. And the book really looks at it looks at like self-care and taking those breaks as like a truly important contributing factor to society. And for me, that was like mind-blowing. The first book in the series, you get a little bit of that sort of societal function and a little bit of Sibling Dex sort of like living their life. And then they sort of start having a little bit of a personal identity crisis and not knowing if they're truly living their life to its own purpose. And they sort of go off on a little quest of self-discovery. And in that time, they meet up with one of the robots who is trying to find its way back to human society to basically check on like how humans have been doing since the robots left. And these two form sort of an unlikely friendship and sort of help each other figure some things out. And this is just sort of a setup for their meeting and their friendship, and it helps, like it takes place more like in the wild on their like little pilgrimage that they're doing. Number 4, and I should preface this by saying number 4 and number 3 for me, depending on the day you ask me, might switch places in my heart and in my mind. But as of right now, number 4 is the first book in the Wayfarers series, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This was Becky Chambers' first book. This was the first book of hers that I read, and it was really a launching point for me, like loving every single thing she's written. This book specifically sort of deals with found family and like what that means, because it takes place on a long haul ship in space, and the crew on that ship is made up of all different species and all different sort of like personalities, but they all really love and care for each other so much. And it follows them on like a year-long mission, truly like shows them coming through for each other, even the ones that don't specifically get along with each other. And this book is a really, really fantastic intro to the like universe that the Wayfarers books take place in, because all of them follow a different group of characters in a different part of the universe. Coming in at number 3 is the 4th and final book in the Wayfarers series, The Galaxy and the Ground Within. This one spoke to me personally because it really deals with cultural differences. Like Record of a Spaceborne Few deals with like one very specific culture and sort of how it relates to those around it, whereas The Galaxy and the Ground Within really delves into like a group of people who are trapped in one small space, and they all live very, very different lives, and they don't know much of anything about each other. And this whole book is them sort of learning about their similarities and differences and like what is keeping them apart or could bring them together. It's really hard for me to explain right now. I'm a fool. But the thing that I connected with the most in this is sort of it's like a side storyline with one of the main characters, and it's a very like specific story about fertility and like people's expectations of you, and like whether or not, because people expect you to like procreate, whether or not you owe them that or you owe yourself like happiness, reproductive rights-y story. And I personally just really, really spoke to me as a person who has faced those expectations in their life. It felt really validating for me. It's also a really good, like, sort of closing the loop on the relationship between that character and one of the characters in The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet in a way that I didn't know that I needed. Okay, number 2, second favorite Becky Chambers book, is the second book in the Monk and Robot series, which is A Prayer for the Crown Shy. And this one I loved. This takes place after sibling Dex and Mosscap the robot make their way back to human society, and they are going town to town so that Mosscap can meet people and ask all of the questions it wants to ask. And it helps Mosscap to figure out, like, essentially what they've been looking for, and it also shows sibling Dex sort of learning more about what they want for their life, and it's just really lovely. Their friendship is much more fully formed in this one. You see them sort of starting to understand each other and protect each other, and it's just like, it's the cutest shit that I've ever read, and I love it so much. I don't know what to say. It's great. Last and absolutely most is number 1, my favorite Becky Chambers book, the second book in the Wayfarers series, A Closed and Common Orbit. This book deals with, like, identity in a way that I think a lot of books don't, because it follows a character that is an AI who was originally living on a ship and then gets put into a human presenting body, and it's them figuring out, like, what it means to be a person and what they actually want, even though they were built to sort of just be, like, of service to other species. This is them really finally, like, getting the chance to figure out their own interests and, like, what they want for their life. And this follows a dual timeline because it follows that character, and that also follows another character sort of in the past who was going through kind of a similar journey where they were created to, like, be slave labor, and one day they start asking questions, and for fear of their own life, like, out of fear for their own life, they run away, and they end up living on a deserted ship in, like, a junkyard, basically, and the AI on that ship becomes sort of like a mother figure to them, and it goes through this whole, like, journey of, like, well, I was created for this, but this is what I want. And it goes through, like, AI and, like, sentient beings and, like, what makes someone a person. And it's just so wonderful. I loved it so much. It also touches on the found family aspect quite a bit, but on, I think, a smaller scale than the first book does, because there's just fewer characters. And I think also because there are fewer characters and because it is told dual timeline, dual perspective, you get a lot of time inside the heads of the 2 main characters. And I love it. I've read that book more times than any of the other Becky Chambers books I have. Most of the Wayfarer books, with the exception of the most recent one, I've read like 4 times, I want to say. And Closed and Comet Orbit, I've read like 6 times, because if I want something that's comforting, that's going to make me happy, it is one that I will reach for again and again and again, and I love it so much. And I feel like that's an unpopular opinion. I feel like most people love the first book the very most, and I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. It's Closed and Common Orbit is better. It's a better book. And that's what I have to say today. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing super fascinating, but I thought it would be nice to sit down and really kind of go through what it is that I love about these books that I have been talking about for 6 years at this point. Feel free to let me know if you think my rankings are wrong in the comments down below. Like, I'm simply not going to agree with you, but, like, by all means, tell me what you love about the books that you love. Let me know if this sort of, like, weird ranking books by my favorite authors thing is a fun video series that you would watch more of. Otherwise, just generally talk to me about what you've been reading lately. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.